So, hello, once again, it's your boy Chris, coming to you live from my car. I'm just driving, and hopefully this video quality won't be too terrible. But, man, yeah, I was literally kind of brainstorming what I'm about to talk about, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was like, I got to record this. So, this one is going to be a little dark, I think, and I apologize, if it comes across as a little too depressing. But it is what it is, and if anything, I want to talk about subjects that I feel are relevant not only to myself but to whoever may watch these videos. And I want to talk to you guys about mental health and the current state of the world, and not just the world, but your world, because we all live here on the planet Earth, but yet at the same time we're all kind of living in our own worlds, you know what I mean? At least that's what it's like for me. But anyway, I myself, damn it, talking about video quality, I myself have noticed that a lot of times I feel isolated and alone in the world. And from different videos I've watched and articles I've read, it's not just people who live alone, but even people who have like a decent social circle in their lives. Friends, family, maybe co-workers they may hang out with. They even though they have people in their lives, they still feel like they're isolated somehow, that they're alone somehow. And to me, that's very interesting because, why? Why would you feel alone, if you have friends and family? But I felt like that, like in the past when I was younger and I was like a social butterfly and I used to go to parties and I used to have people to hang out with and all this other stuff. There were often times where I'd be at the party or wherever it was and I would still feel alone. I would feel completely alone. And it's like I was watching everybody else have fun except for myself. And it's a weird feeling to feel that way, And man, I went to therapy over the years. I've talked about how I feel and all this other stuff, and they're like, "Well, you're not alone." I apologize for that. You're not alone. I'm gonna have to park. I need to get one of those phone mounts. But anyway, they're like, "You're not alone. You're not the only one going through it. Other people go through it, so on and so forth. That depression does that to a person, blah, blah, blah." Okay, so everybody's depressed? Like everybody feels like a goldfish in the bowl, And I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily buy that, Although depression can hit anybody, from any walk of life, doesn't matter how rich, poor you may be, whatever the case is, no matter your religion, you can experience depression and feel alone and isolated. And it's a crappy feeling. But that aside, if you don't think you're depressed, why do you think you're alone? And it seems to be an epidemic because I watch a lot of videos that talk about this subject. Like I said, I've read articles and stuff, and it's not just in America; it's all over the world. And it's not just, and the age demographic varies too. It's not just younger people or older people; it's everybody. And which I thought was really interesting because there were groups of younger people in their like early to mid 20s who felt alone and isolated. And I thought to myself, wow, okay, that's crazy. Because, a lot of people talk about, when you're in your 20s, that's like the time of your life, you're in your prime, so on and so forth. And that for a lot of people, that's when you have, you're like your most active social circle, so to speak. And, you're going out, you're partying, you're doing this, you're doing that, so on and so forth. So when I read that, I was like, wow, okay, that's crazy. Young people are feeling alone and isolated, but they are. I remember watching a video one time on YouTube, and it was I think it was 3 different people. They were all like young business professionals, like in their early to mid 30s. Like I said, young business professionals, made good money, went to, work, dress nice, all this other stuff. And they felt completely isolated. They felt alone. They're like, all I do is go to work and come home. And I may socialize with people while I'm at work, but outside of work, that's it. And one of them, if I remember correctly, started a website specifically with people like himself in mind, who felt alone and isolated and just didn't seem to know how to make friends anymore. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. Because I'm 49. I'm almost going to be 50 in a couple of months. And one of the things that happened to me as time went on and I lost friends for, various reasons, because, it's just life. And people move and they get married and, blah, blah, blah. And you fall out of contact with people for whatever reason. At this stage in the game, at my age, I don't know how to just, like, okay, so how to explain it. When you're in your 20s, all right, for example, and you're at the club or the bar or whatever, and you're having a few drinks, most people I know, when they're having a few drinks, they lose their shyness, they lose their inhibitions, you loosen up and you pretty much talk to anybody, right? And that's when a guy will, get the courage to hit on a girl, and even though she's way out of his league, supposedly, blah, blah, blah. And I distinctively remember, like, either myself or other strangers, we would just start talking to each other. It just, hey, what's up, blah, blah, blah. Like, you'd say something in a conversation, somebody would just start laughing. Next thing you know, you're talking to that person or whatever. Now, at my age, I picture myself, sitting, like, say, at a restaurant, right? And you, like, see, whatever your favorite restaurant is. So you're sitting there, you're enjoying your dinner or whatever, but you're alone. And you're watching, like, other people. And, like, you see a group of people come in, and they're all laughing and joking. And, it seem like they're having a good time. And you're thinking, man, I wish I could be friends with them. I wish I could be in on this conversation. I wish I was at that table laughing it up with them. So now my question is, how do you go about introducing yourself to these people? See, back in the day, right, I don't think I would have thought twice about it. But like, hey, what's up, blah, blah, blah. Now, at my age, not so much. And I don't know if this is just something that actually exists, or if it's kind of just like this social stigma that has been implanted in the brains of people once they hit a certain age. Like, oh, that's socially inappropriate. You can't go and just, talk to random strangers and introduce yourself. And I'm like, well, but why not? I mean, how do you make friends? How do you break the ice? What am I going to, like, tell the waiter, hey, can you slip these people a note? I mean, so and if that is in fact the case, which obviously it is, because I know I'm not the only one that thinks that way, it presents a problem, because now you have people all hitting a certain age demographic, and then all of a sudden now they're like, well, I can't talk to people. Why? Because they're going to think you're creepy or whatever. and like I picture this like scenario in my head where I try to go over and introduce myself to so and so, and then they just all kind of look at me like, do I know you, dude? Like, who are you? What's wrong with you? Can't you see we're sitting here eating dinner and blah blah blah? Like, can we help you? It'd be like a salesman knocking out your door at dinner time. You're like, oh God, that's how it feels to me. That's what I think, and I'm like, oh man, I don't want to put myself in that position to be rejected like that and make these people feel awkward. And then what if they really get offended? They're like, I'm calling the cops on this creep or something. Like, you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be inappropriate. I'm just trying to make friends, right? And I remember one time I had a therapist say to me, well, you got to take advantage of Facebook or whatever. Now, look, everybody has different experiences with stuff like that. For me, Facebook is completely useless. Completely useless as far as making friends. Forget about it. It doesn't work for me anyway. I can friend somebody and then try to talk to them and I get absolutely nothing. I get ghosted, and then it's like, you know what? It's not even worth it. And then this person just ends up sitting on my friend's wall for like a year, and we have literally no communication whatsoever. And I've made multiple attempts to say, hey, what's up? Blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Da, da, da. Nothing. Delete. Bye. I can't be bothered. Even people I know personally that live in the same city as I do, even they don't want to talk. So Facebook or whatever, that's out the window for me. So I don't know. Maybe Craigslist works for some people. I have no idea. But anyway, if that's happening to people in my age bracket, then how do you explain people younger than myself? Why is this happening? People literally say that they feel like the world has changed. Again, like going back to what I said earlier, like something is wrong and they can't quite put their finger on it. And for some people, it's a sense of doom and gloom. It's an anxiety, a persistent anxiety that's always there, and you don't quite know what's wrong, but yet you just can't seem to relax and just live in the moment. And it's like you're watching everybody else enjoy themselves, the what I call the shiny happy people, right? Like the REM song. And you're just watching it, and you're thinking, wow, how? You know what I mean? Like, how does this happen? Like, why are they happy? And why can't I be happy? And why is this group of people together and they're socializing and being friendly, but I seem to be so ostracized from society or whatever? So, anyway, that's kind of just my random thought that went through my head. By the way, shiny happy people, that's not REM. I think it was D-Light. Groove is in the heart, those guys. Anyway, ADD. God, poor Robin Williams. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you people feel? Because I know I'm obviously not the only one. And for this to be happening all over the world, and like I said, I found it very shocking for young people to be saying this. Like, I mean, even teenagers, and I'm like, wow. Because I remember as a teenager especially, there were plenty of, people to talk to, and my phone was always ringing. I remember my parents always yelling at me because my friends had no respect for the fact that, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, hey, let's call Chris. What's he doing? My parents answer the phone. What the hell are you doing calling this house at this time of night? Blah, blah, blah. And apparently now, that's not happening. And I remember one time I was at a friend's house, and he was telling me that his son was, and his friends were over, and they're all sitting on the couch in the living room, and they were sitting there texting each other, having a whole conversation with each other while they're literally sitting right next to each other on the couch. And he's like, what the hell's wrong with kids today? And the only thing I could think of was, they didn't want you to know what the conversation was about, so they were trying to keep it on the DL, so that's why they were texting. But I've also found out that people will just do that talking about anything. And I thought, wow, okay, you are literally sitting right next to your friend and you're not having a verbal communication with them. You're texting. There's something wrong with this picture. I remember this girl I knew a few years back. I remember one time she told me, she was my age, mind you, so she grew up in the age of rotary phones, push button phone, when you had that phone that was attached to the wall with the long phone cord, right? And she told me she hated talking, she rather text. And I was like, like, really? Like, what did you do before, texting came along? And it just surprised me that someone my Generation X, someone my age would say that, because we grew up talking on the telephone, and we're talking before caller ID, before answering machines, where you just had no choice. Pick up the phone. Oh, somebody you don't want to talk to, click. That's it. And the way you ignore somebody, take the phone off the hook, kind of thing. Yeah, make it make sense. I don't know, but anyway, some people blame social media. They said as with the onset of social media, people started to rely more on talking via Facebook Messenger or whatever, or in the comment section, and decided to actually become less social. So what was supposed to draw people together, and it initially did in some ways, is now drawing us apart. Well, like I said, you just got 3,000 people on your friends list, and like, give me a break, dude. If you lived to be 100, you wouldn't know 3,000 people in your whole life. You know what I mean? They're just friends that have just accumulated and accumulated. You just add and add and add, and you don't even talk to them. So, yeah. But it sucks. It sucks to constantly live in that state of anxiety. I live, anxiously. I live feeling a combination of guilt and conviction. I do. I have that like doom and gloom complex. I always think about what's going to happen to me when I die. And I'm a born again Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe in heaven, and and all that. And that being said, I mean, I haven't been the best Christian a person could be. So I keep thinking, oh, when I die, I'm going to have my day of judgment, and God's going to be like, nah, buddy, you weren't good. So elevator's going down. And I think personally, I know for myself anyway, that's a huge reason why I think a lot of people have so much nostalgia for the whatever it is, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, it takes you back to that point in time in your youth where you slept like a rock, you had friends, and like all your good memories, the parties you went to, your first dance, your first kiss, whatever it was, birthday parties, whatever it may be. Going to the big box toy stores, Toys R Us, KB Toy Store, just the magic and the wonder of discovering everything for the first time. Saturday morning cartoons, hanging out with your favorite cousins or your grandmother or aunts or whatever. I was fortunate that I have a lot of these happy memories, but they're bittersweet at times, because I think about them and I'm happy, but then I'm also sad because, some of these people are gone. Those moments are gone. I'm never going to be 10, 11, 12 years old again. You know what I mean? It'll never be 1983 with me sitting in front of the TV, eating a bowl of cereal, watching He-Man, G.I. Joe, whatever it is. You know what I mean? And all the other great things that came along with, as time progressed, teenage years and all that. And for like myself, and for I know a lot of other people, and probably for some of you out there, you had those moments in your life, and then that shift happened. For some of us, it was gradually. We didn't even realize it was happening. And then it just hit us one day, and we were like, dang. It's like I'm always seem to be worried about something. Paying the rent, paying the mortgage, paying your car note, paying your car insurance, gassing up the damn car. Oh, it needs tires, needs an oil change. Paying your utility bills, Gotta go to work, gotta deal with my boss's bullcrap. I'm so sick and tired of this job, this soul-sucking job, or whatever. Or if you're, it seems like everything is just getting, not seems, is getting more and more expensive. So the things you used to enjoy doing, like, man, hitting up the movies every weekend, now cost you, an arm and a kidney. You know what I mean? Last time I went to the movies, it was like $30 just for me. $30 between the ticket and the popcorn and the soda, $30. And I hadn't even sat in the theater yet. I'm like, damn, this movie better be good. And, like back in the day, you could go to McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell, buy a whole combo meal for $5 and get back change. So all these things start like kind of piling up on a person. And you just say to yourself, wow, like, what the heck? Like, am I truly happy anymore? And you can have, and I hate to say it because it sounds like, like I'm being like this really superficial, unappreciative kind of person. And I'm not trying to come across like that. But despite the fact that you have, you live in America and you got a roof over your head and a car and clothes and food to eat and you got all these things in it, and that's wonderful. I mean, that's awesome that you do. But there's still, like, no true happiness in there anymore. And that's where going back to what I said before about the whole thing about being a Christian, like, it seems the only real true purpose and meaning and anything that brings true everlasting happiness in your life is on the spiritual level, is like when you're seeking God, and when you're giving of yourself, volunteering to help others, giving of your time and yourself to help another human being or whatever. Those are the moments where I have felt most at peace, most fulfilled. Like I felt like, oh, I actually did a good thing, going in volunteering at something, an event, an activity at the church, versus, I bought a whole bunch of cool figures online. It's so fleeting. Like, the new figures come in, yay, awesome, cool, display them, done. Oh, it's over before it even started. And it's like, okay. Versus, like I said, I volunteered at a soup kitchen, for example, and you go, man, it felt so good. These people came to me, they were destitute, they were hungry, and I helped to feed them. And you're like, wow, and just seeing the appreciation and the joy in their face, there's nothing beats that, And I would definitely suggest that anybody definitely try that. Give God a try. I mean, what do you got to lose? What is it going to hurt you if you go and volunteer at the Salvation Army or something, or at a hospital, a nursing home, whatever, at your local church? I mean, that's one of the easiest ways to find something to do. Churches always need volunteers. They always are doing stuff for the community. At least my church is. So, it's a good way to, like, feel better about yourself, I guess, and do something good for God, do something good for your community. And even people who are atheists, religious people, even they'll tell you the same thing when they, because they volunteer, they do stuff, they get involved in programs and stuff that they believe in, raising money for, anything, whatever it may be, cancer research, pets, abandoned pets, orphans, what pick your pick whatever program, and they'll tell you, like, oh man, it felt so awesome today. Like, some people, like, even marathons, right? Like people run a marathon, they said they felt great because they ran for cancer. Or even the people that are at the marathon that hand out the bottles of water, the cups of water to the runners, even they said that they felt like this sense of like belonging and purpose. And maybe that's the biggest problem, like maybe we're too focused on ourselves and the materialism of it all, like bigger TVs, better, resolution, 4K and all that, and better Xboxes and PlayStations and bigger and better this, and better car and this and that, and the wardrobe and whatever it is, and then in addition to the worry of, well, do I even have, food, clothing, and shelter? The heck with major brand labels or whatever. Some people are just struggling just to keep a roof over their head. And it is a struggle. And I realize that that's something that has always plagued people since the beginning of time, where, you have to, self-preservation, you have to have food, clothing, and the basics for survival. And it brings its own level of stress, because how am I going to get it? How am I going to keep it? How am I going to keep it coming in? Ugh. And everybody wonders why they want to go back to take me back to the 80s, the 90s, whatever it was, when I was happy and carefree or whatever. And yeah, it can be tough out there, man, and you're not alone. You're not the only one that's going through it. And again, I would say, and that's, I'm like talking to myself too, in a sense. I need to take my own advice. Don't underestimate the power of therapy. It can help. Just having that person to talk to vent to. If you have friends, if you have family that you can talk to them. You know what I mean? If you can find a cause to get behind and volunteer and, do something for somebody else, do it. Give it a shot. Seek God. Seek to do things good in your community. And honestly, I think sometimes I keep telling myself, to heck with what is considered a societal norm. Sometimes I feel like, you know what? Sometimes we just got to be willing to make a fool out of ourselves and risk that rejection, and maybe just go up and talk to that random group of strangers. Maybe not necessarily when they're eating, but, you're at the grocery store and whether it's a girl you find attractive or a guy you find attractive or just somebody you might, think, hey, they look kind of cool. I like their sneakers. Hey, there's a good starting point. Oh, you like Air Jordans. Oh, man. Who's to say? You know what I mean? What's it going to hurt? The worst thing they can do is be like, get away from me, you freaking weirdo. Okay, well, have a nice day anyway. I mean, look at it this way. Those of you who play the lottery or you buy scratch tickets or whatever, odds are most of the time when you play, you're not going to win. And then every once in a while, like, oh, I won a couple of bucks on a scratch ticket. Yay. You know what I mean? So it makes it all worth it. So, give it a shot, I guess, would be my best advice. And hang in there. This is one cool thing in the aspect of social media and, being able to upload to like YouTube and Facebook and things like that is, I don't know who's going to see this video, but I know there's somebody out there who's feeling like me, so, and is having these similar thoughts and emotions and whatnot. So, let's talk about it, man. Reach out. I always want to hear what you guys' opinions are. Be safe. God bless. Until next time.